The sea breeze drifted softly through rows of palm trees, standing tall like guards, but it did little to soften the harsh Caribbean sun. A black woman, her bronze-brown skin glowing under the early sky, stepped into the five-star resort and not a single head turned. Not because she didn't stand out, but because they assumed she wasn't worth noticing. She wheeled a matte black Samsonite suitcase, no flashy logos, no decorative straps. Her curly hair was tied high, her skin untouched by makeup. At first glance, she could have been anyone: a housekeeper, a lost guest, a black woman who wandered into the wrong place. Only the keycard in her pocket, room 403, Ocean View Executive Suite, knew exactly who she was. Her name is Dr. Sloane Mireille, but here no one asked. They only looked and judged. On Racist Exposed, we share real or all too plausible stories of injustice revealed, where black identity is still not synonymous with status, even after breaking every barrier. If you've ever walked into a room and been mistaken for the help, if you've ever worn a suit, only to be stopped at the back door, if you believe silence can be the loudest form of resistance, this series is for you. Like, share and subscribe if you believe justice doesn't need to scream to be heard, because one day, the story you kept silent might be the one that changes everything. Now, follow the quiet power of Dr. Sloane Mireille, a woman who once saved thousands of lives through her breakthrough in medical tech, yet was denied a seaside seat, because no one thought she was important enough to deserve it. The reception area of Esperanza del Mar unfolded like a meticulously programmed tropical dreamlight, reflecting off polished stone floors beneath wooden beams, the scent of cedar mingling with a breath of jasmine. Piano music trickled down from hidden ceiling speakers, steady and emotionless, like a heart rate monitor. Nothing here was by chance, and no one ever entered without being categorized within 2 seconds. As the revolving glass doors opened, every eye brushed past the black woman walking in as if some internal sensor had been triggered, but not yet set off. Sloane Mireille walked with calm, upright poise, no makeup, no accessories, just the cold gleam of an unbranded watch on her wrist. Her suitcase made no sound, but still carried the weighted presence of someone long accustomed to entering spaces that never truly welcomed her. The receptionist saw her. He looked but didn't ask. Instead, he bent down, opened a drawer, and pulled out a white plastic bag. "I'm guessing you're here for the 2 o'clock housekeeping interview." His tone was flat, not skeptical, just certain. Inside the bag, a uniform, white apron, cream polo shirt, and a printed shift schedule with the name Maria K. written in black ink. Sloane looked at the bag, then at him. No frown, no words, just a slight tilt of her head, almost imperceptible, as if to ask, "What exactly did you see in me that led you here?" The atmosphere in the lobby didn't shift, but the traffic around her did. A white couple strolled by, greeted by name. An older male guest was handed a cold towel and a glass of mint water, and Sloane stood still, the housekeeping bag untouched, an image just outside the perimeter of priority. The receptionist smiled politely, his eyes still locked on the bag. "We appreciate early applicants. You'll have time to fill some forms before the tour." Sloane didn't reach for it. She didn't explain. She didn't correct him. Instead, she removed her sunglasses, slowly opened a black leather wallet, and placed a heavy metal Amex Black card on the cool marble countertop. No words. The receptionist froze 1 second, 2, then 3. A female colleague whispered something into his ear. He nodded quickly, fingers rushing across the keyboard. I apologize. Dr. Mireille, you're checked in for the Ocean View Executive, room 403. Let me just... No need, she cut in quietly, not sharp, but final. She picked up the card, closed the wallet, and stood tall. He extended a finely carved wooden room key card, his hands slightly trembling, as if he hadn't quite escaped the echo of his own mistake. Sloane left the desk with the gait of someone who had walked through more lobbies than most people had walked through church doors, her posture steady, chin level, but each step across the polished stone left behind an invisible scrape, the kind no one sees, but the bearer knows exactly where it lives. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Because had she turned, she would have seen the same things she'd grown too used to. A uniform bag still sitting on the counter, as if it had never been misplaced. A receptionist pretending to be busy, trying to erase a mistake the system didn't recognize as one, and a few eyes now shifting uncomfortably, but still, not a single apology. What chilled Sloane wasn't the incident. It was how easily it happened. How frighteningly routine it was for a black woman to step into that space and immediately be coded as the help. Just by her walk, her skin, her silence. She walked down the corridor, sea breeze curling through the glass doors. Her hair moved slightly. She held the key card in hand, a temporary badge, silently proving her right to be there. But the cruelest part, she wasn't surprised, not shocked, not hurt like the first time. Just callous, the kind of weariness born from seeing too much to still be angry, yet never enough to call it normal. Sloane thought quietly. If I wore a blazer and had a white assistant at my side, they would have called me Madame Mireille from the entrance. She knew it, and so did the system, but both pretended otherwise. Here, racism doesn't need to scream. It only needs to be believed, a false belief operating so seamlessly, no one even thinks to fix it. The hallway of the executive suites was designed to avoid glances, silence noise, and filter out anyone who didn't quite belong. It was long, hushed, and so immaculately clean one could imagine the janitorial staff walking backward to avoid leaving footprints. Soft ceiling lights spilled gently onto pale limestone floors. Room numbers 401, 402, 403 were carved into forged steel plates, exquisitely engraved. Each suite nearly $1,600 per night. Sloane Mireille walked slowly down the hallway, holding her wooden keycard, suitcase rolling quietly behind her. She noticed a surveillance camera in the corner barely moving, its red light flickering weakly, as if pretending to work. It was the kind of dead gaze that existed to reassure, not to protect, certainly not someone like her. As she passed room 401, the door flung open. A white woman, curly blonde hair, white silk robe, rhinestone sandals stuck her head out. First surprise, then suspicion, finally alarm. "Excuse me? Excuse me!" she shrieked, her voice sharp and urgent, echoing down the corridor like a fire alarm. "She was near my room. I think she went in. Did you take something?" She didn't need evidence. Her certainty was enough, the kind rooted in the belief that a black woman, simply dressed and alone in the suite wing, could not possibly be in the right place. Sloane stopped. No flinch, no step back, no reaction. She looked at the woman, a 2-second stare, not confrontational, not contemptuous, but just long enough for the woman to hear the sound of her own voice. "I said she went in. She shouldn't be here." From the far end of the hall, a security guard appeared. Young, white. His face still wore the eagerness of someone new and untrained. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" "Yes, she's not a guest. I've never seen her before. She might have come in through the staff entrance." No one asked Sloane who she was. No one asked what she held in her hand. Her mere existence was enough to trigger a panic, a presence misplaced, and for some, that alone is cause for suspicion. She didn't ask. Why do you think that she didn't say, "I have a key card"? She didn't explain. "I'm a guest, not a housekeeper." Sloane knew too well to explain is to concede. It's a quiet admission that you need someone else's permission to exist legally in a space you already paid for. Instead, she turned without a word and walked to room 403. The guard hesitated, then followed like an uninvited shadow. She inserted the key into the slot. A soft beep. A green light flickered. The door unlocked. A hint of lavender floated from inside the room. The suite opened like another world, white curtains swaying. A king-size bed with cream silk sheets, and on the mahogany desk, a raised print card. "Welcome, Dr. Sloane Mireille." She pulled her suitcase inside, never once looking back. The security guard stopped at the threshold, unsure whether he was allowed in anymore. The white woman stood frozen in the hallway, her eyes now less certain but her mouth holding tight to her defense. I must have been mistaken. She didn't look like a guest. No apology. No one asked if Sloane was okay. No one thought they needed to. Instead, they dispersed quietly as if nothing had happened. Just a misunderstanding, a moment of confusion, a harmless misjudgment, not worth making noise about. But Sloane knew better. It wasn't personal. It was structural. The product of 1,000 identical glances, repeated every hour of every day. The only difference today, the person they judged now stood inside the very room they couldn't imagine her affording. The door closed behind her, a soft click that shut out the world like a silent period. Inside, warm light spilled across hardwood floors, reflecting her still figure in a room she had booked, paid for, arrived to on time, under her own name. And still, she had been doubted. She didn't remove her shoes, she didn't sit down. Instead, she opened her bag, pulled out a small device no bigger than a flash drive, and plugged it into her phone. A wide-angle dashcam, preloaded with encryption. Not for social media, but to keep for the right moment. The incident hadn't hurt her, but it had worn her down, like walking barefoot on wet sand, soft at first, then sharply painful from invisible cuts. She once dreamed of a world fair enough that she wouldn't need to prove anything, but reality reminded her suspicion arrives before your name. Sloane looked in the mirror. No anger, no sadness, just a quiet pause. If I were a white man in a navy suit, carrying a laptop, would they have called security? She knew the answer. So did the system. Outside the window, the sun was setting, casting gold-orange light across the calm ocean. But beneath that beauty, the system kept humming, only stuttering when someone like her stepped in. And that was the part that exhausted her most. Not the fight itself, but having to fight even in the very place she paid to rest. The Sky Lounge sat atop the West Wing, promoted as a dining and scenic experience reserved for the truly elite. A polished way of enforcing an unwritten rule only for those who look the same, dress the same, and move the same. But most importantly, those who appear to belong. Sloane walked toward the private elevator via a teakwood hallway lined with white flowers as delicate as snow. She wore an ivory linen dress, her hair neatly pinned, a book in one hand and a wooden room key in the other. Nothing out of place, nothing attention-seeking, except for the fact that the hand holding the key was black. A bronze plaque next to the elevator read "Exclusive Access Diamond Tier Guests Only." But she knew her spend level far exceeded Diamond. She was above ranking. She tapped her key. The green light blinked. The elevator had not yet opened when the sound of high heels echoed behind her. "Ma'am, excuse me." A woman's voice rang out. Sweet, but sharp. That elevator's restricted to Diamond-level guests. Sloane turned. A white woman in her 30s, wearing the resort's management uniform, approached, a smile that never reached her eyes. She didn't ask for a name, didn't glance at the key, just looked at Sloane's face and made a decision. "I'm aware," Sloane replied, calmly tapping the key again. The light stayed green. "I'm heading to the Sky Lounge for lunch." The woman stepped back half a pace, her eyes flicking to the key. Nothing wrong yet, nothing acknowledged. For some, validity doesn't live in a key's chip. It lives in the skin of the person holding it. "I understand," the manager continued, her tone stiff with forced courtesy. "But for the Sky Lounge, we require additional confirmation. Just a quick identity verification." Sloane's eyes narrowed slightly. "I already verified my identity when I booked the entire suite floor." A beat of silence, not confusion, but discomfort, the kind that comes when truth disrupts a script. The manager pressed the earpiece button. "Hi, can you check if a Dr. Mireille is approved for Sky Lounge access? She's attempting entry." Attempting, as if she were sneaking in, as if she were testing for cracks in the system. A male voice crackled through the earpiece, hesitant. Dr. Mireille is actually on our platinum investor list." "Wait, let me—" The manager cut him off with a tight smile. "I'm so sorry. Sometimes our system doesn't update guest tiers fast enough." Sloane didn't respond, She stood still like a sculpture misplaced in someone else's gallery. Behind her, a white couple in golf attire approached, holding blue plastic key cards. No scanning, no questions. The manager leaned aside graciously. "Good afternoon, Mr. Houghton. Please, enjoy your lunch upstairs." Sloane watched, didn't react, just took one slow breath. Then she unlocked her phone. Calmly. A finger slid across the screen. The front camera turned on, switched to record. With a glance, with a tone, with a single word attempting, she had been shifted from guest to subject of scrutiny. She didn't raise the phone, didn't need to aim too obviously. The mini camera embedded in her phone case was designed for moments like this, non-intrusive, but capturing everything. "Can I ask why exactly you needed additional verification?" Her voice steady, neutral. The manager replied quickly. "It's just policy. Happens sometimes." "Happens sometimes to who?" The woman's lips pressed together. A silence passed, just long enough to feel like an answer. Behind them, Mr. Houghton laughed loudly. The elevator attendant pressed the button for him, no ID needed. Sloane stepped back from the elevator. No more questions. No further words. She turned toward the manager, camera still rolling. "I'll take the stairs." Her voice light as the sea breeze, but carrying the weight of someone used to documenting every denial, not to fight, but to reveal. She walked away, her eyes brushing past the bronze plaque once more. Diamond-tier guests only. The word only seemed to glow not from sunlight, but from its deeper implication. Someone is always being excluded. On paper, she qualified. In the system, she exceeded. But in their eyes, she still needed verification. The main restaurant of Esperanza del Mar opened promptly at 11:30 a.m. Sloane arrived at 12:17, not too early to seem overly eager, not too late to run into the noisy tourist crowd. She chose a table near the palm garden, under a white umbrella, where the sunlight filtered through like golden silk draping over her shoulders. Her lunch included a tropical fruit salad, grilled sea bass with citrus glaze, and a glass of 2018 Riesling selected from a wine list reserved for diamond-tier guests, and above. The server, a young Latino man in his 20s, had a pleasant face but flickering eyes. He took the order, nodded politely, and delivered the food right on time. Nothing to fault, but no smile either, as if he didn't know whether to be friendly or cautious. Halfway through her entree, two other staff members, one, a white man in his 40s, the other, a younger female server, approached the service counter just behind her table. They stood about 2 meters away. A low decorative hedge blocked their direct view of her, but not the sound. "Table 12. Yeah, that's her. Black guests never tip well. Keep an eye on her. Don't overpour." The voice carried no malice, no snarl, no smirk, just confidence. The kind of bias passed quietly from morning to afternoon shift, from senior to junior staff, like a self-evident truth requiring no proof. Sloane's fork paused mid-air. She didn't turn, didn't glance, didn't change her expression. Her right hand moved gently to the edge of her purse, pressing the record button on her phone. The mini mic embedded in her phone case began capturing every frequency, the clink of cutlery, the whispered assumptions, all cloaked as private. "If they think I didn't hear," she thought, "that's all the more reason to record, because the most unguarded words are often the truest." After finishing her meal, Sloane gestured for the check. The same young server returned, quicker than before, as if hoping to finish the task swiftly or avoid any further observation. She took the bill without a word. Total $593.47. She placed her Amex on the table, then drew out a fountain pen. The blank tip line sat like a test of generosity, or more accurately, the kind presumed lacking in people who looked like her. In delicate handwriting, she wrote tip $180, total $773.47. Then looked up and smiled at the server as he returned. "Thank you. Everything was just fine." His face shifted slightly, not at the amount, but at the surprise that it came from her. as if something inside him pre-programmed, quietly installed, had just crashed. "You're welcome, Watson, ma'am. Dr. Mireille." "Doctor is fine." She nodded, smile still faint but steady. He bowed slightly and stepped away. Sloane remained seated for a few more minutes. She wasn't in a hurry. Her fingers slid across her phone, saving the audio file with a note: bias at table 12. Lunch shift. 12:35 p.m. It wasn't retaliation. It was habit one she'd long refined, recording moments people thought were spoken in the dark. Because light doesn't always come from lamps. Sometimes it comes from simply knowing someone is listening. On her way out, Sloane passed a small reception desk at the end of the corridor, the restaurant manager reviewing staff schedules. She didn't pause, but the eyes of a female staff member, 3 steps away, met hers, then quickly retreated as if she realized something had gone wrong. Maybe they knew she'd heard, maybe they didn't. It didn't matter. Once words are heard clearly, they cannot be unheard. She turned down the garden path toward the suite wing, walking between 2 rows of ornamental banana trees. In her mind, the words echoed like a sour note in an otherwise elegant symphony. "Black guests never tip well. Keep an eye on her." The comment didn't wound. It simply wore her down. The fatigue of snapping each small branch of prejudice, again and again, in every meal, every trip, every silent hallway. She thought of other moments when a limo driver didn't see her at the airport, when a boutique clerk suggested she check the sales section first, when a young doctor called her honey instead of doctor. Each time, she thought, I have to prove I'm not who they assume I am, and then pay extra to prove it's a false assumption. The bitter truth, she still tipped. Because if she didn't, that whisper would be confirmed as truth. She lifted her head as the late afternoon sun warmed her face. Not angry, not proud. Just a black woman used to resisting through intentional kindness. Kindness not born of weakness, but selected, like a tactic. Some fight with volume. She fights with receipts, recordings, and a patience sharp enough to cut. Tuesday afternoon. The sky was clear, the breeze strong enough to lift her hair, but not so harsh that she had to squint. Sloane walked past the marble-tiled corridor that led toward the seaside restaurant. Her black silk dress clung to her like a second skin of water, flowing with every step. Her presence was calm, not rushed, not showy, but enough to turn heads in the restaurant's foyer first out of curiosity, then shifting toward quiet judgment. Azul Cielo prided itself as the most exclusive dining experience in the entire resort, reservations only. Guests screened, with special preference for those in the Black Diamond tier of their internal membership program. It was a tier funded in part by the very investment firm Sloane co-founded. She was invited to dine here anytime, no reservations needed, but that's what she knew. The staff did not. She approached the reception desk with a soft smile. "Hi, I'd like the table by the sea, the one near the lantern wall." The hostess, hair neatly tied, red lips, slender build, looked her over from head to toe. Not rude, not overt. Just sure that Sloane wasn't the one who booked that table. "Do you have a reservation under your name?" "No. I was told this tier doesn't require one." The hostess nodded, turned to her screen, scrolled through the list. A pause. "I'm so sorry," she said, voice soft as pressed linen, "but that table is reserved tonight, for someone important." The word important was spoken slowly, almost deliberately, and her gaze fell to the hem of Sloane's dress, light as an X-ray. No reaction. Sloane simply nodded as if the table were still being cleaned. She turned and walked away. A gust of wind brushed a strand of hair across her cheek. She didn't move it. Instead, she opened her bag, pulled out her phone, launched the Esperanza Capital internal app, and tapped the small button in the lower corner. Trigger review, hospitality partner, client experience, silent flag. One denied table, one quiet phrase, one glance that did the work of a policy manual. It was all recorded in memory, and in the tiny dash cam discreetly clipped to her bag. Sloane didn't leave the restaurant. She walked down to the seaside bar and ordered a non-alcoholic lemon soda. From there, she could see the reserved for someone important table clearly. It was still empty. No candles. No place settings. No signs of prep. A staff member stood nearby, not waiting. Just there. She took a slow sip of her soda. Uninvited. A memory resurfaced. At age 28, her first investment summit in New York, wearing a Zara blazer, she was stopped in the lobby by a guard who assumed she was part of the delivery staff. The line then staff uses the back entrance. How different is that from reserved for someone important? Just a more polished version. The cut still slices just as sharp. A white man in a light blue suit passed by, gold-rimmed glasses catching the sun. The bartender nodded, smiling wide. Sloane glanced back at the hostess. She was whispering to the manager now, voice low, eyes darting toward Sloane. Quick, but not subtle. Maybe they realized, maybe not. It didn't matter. She checked her phone. A response had come through. Internal review in queue. Case WOR 417S-M. She saved the update and locked the screen. An important person doesn't need to sit by the ocean. An important person only needs to be quiet enough to make the system take a second look at itself. She stood. Didn't finish her drink. Didn't return to the host desk. She simply walked away as if everything was proceeding as planned. But inside, a campaign had already been launched. Some tables are never set for people like her, but that doesn't mean she doesn't belong. It only means they weren't ready to see her sitting there. Back in room 403, she hung up the black silk dress with care as if it had just returned from battle. No wrinkles, no tears, but soaked in invisible sweat. She changed into sportswear, tied her hair back, opened her tablet. On screen, the Esperanza Capital dashboard giving her full access to every investment partner, including this resort. A notice appeared in the corner. Hospitality partner Azul Cielo, silent review flag activated by Dr. S. Mireille. Preliminary audit begins 48H. No complaint form needed, no names called out, just one tap. Because true power doesn't come from who speaks loudest, but from who has a system that listens when they speak. She opened the recorded footage. The hostess's eyes, the deliberate phrasing, the polished voice, full of polite exclusion. Nothing aggressive, but in context, each detail became undeniable evidence of a service culture with conditions. She saved the file, encrypted it, and attached it to the internal review with one note. Pattern detected, race-based assumption embedded in front of house protocol. No further comment. She shut the tablet, drew open the curtains. The tide was rising. Evening sunlight stretched across the sand. Far in the distance, the seaside table still sat empty, or maybe someone had finally taken it. But she no longer cared. She didn't need to sit there to prove anything. Because some audits don't show up in spreadsheets. They happen in the subtle ways you're excluded by a sentence that sounds harmless. The meeting room was on the service level, far from the guest areas. No windows. Just a long ebony table, rows of dark leather chairs, and an air conditioner blowing a steady 72 degrees, as if to compensate for the quiet pressure rising in the room. 6 people were already seated when she walked in. The resort's general manager, a white man in his 50s. Salt and pepper hair, pearl-colored suit, stood to shake her hand. Next to him, the director of operations, the head of HR, the finance representative, and 2 members of the investment liaison board. None of them knew the reason for the meeting. They had only received an email the night before with a single subject line. Internal incident escalation confidential. Sloane did not shake hands. She placed her laptop on the table, opened the screen, and sat down, crossing her legs. Her eyes met each person in turn. Not angry, not cold, just observing. "I appreciate you all being here," she began, her tone level, like every word had been scripted long before this room existed. "I won't take much of your time. I just need a few clarifications." She activated the projector. The first slide appeared. Esperanza del Mar, Investor Audit Summary. The logo of the investment firm appeared, with a line of small text beneath. Authorized by Dr. Sloane Mireille, silent audit-triggered case, Rojo 417S-M. No one breathed. Glances flicked around the room. The finance rep sat up straighter. The general manager furrowed his brow. mentally scrambling to reassemble his memory. "Wait, Dr. Mireille, are you saying that I'm not just a guest?" she said. "Yes." A second later, the first video played the Sky Lounge elevator scene, where a staff member requested additional identity verification. Then, the audio recording. "Black guests never tip well. Keep an eye on her." Finally, the clip at the seaside restaurant host stand. "I'm sorry, but that table is reserved for someone important." Each clip ended in silence. No music, no voiceover, just facts and the background hum of the air conditioning. She didn't raise her voice, but each piece of evidence struck like a formal indictment delivered without needing to say the word guilty. The general manager clasped his hands, cleared his throat. "Dr. Mireille, first of all, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Of course we take this very seriously. I must say I'm surprised, shocked, even." She nodded slightly, said nothing. "We'll be launching an internal review, certainly. But you know, sometimes things get misinterpreted. Our staff interacts with hundreds of guests every day. It's possible that some of what you experienced was isolated," she cut in, her voice still soft. He stopped. "We don't condone any form of bias, obviously, but context matters. I believe our team has always acted with the resort's reputation and standards in mind." "I'm sure they have," she said, then switched to the next slide. The screen displayed a bar chart showing complaints filed by African and Asian guests over the past 6 months. No formal records, but dozens of cases noted in internal emails as being handled off-process. "You have a pattern. What you don't have is accountability." The director of operations interjected. "With all due respect, Dr. Mireille, we would have addressed this sooner had we known you were involved." She looked up, directly at him. "And if I weren't?" No one answered. No one touched their water glasses. No one adjusted their ties. She saw at their eyes searching for a place to place the blame, a vague policy, a junior staffer, a delayed training session. But none of those could cover up the truth. This entire system only paid attention once the person discriminated against had the power to pull funding. She stood, didn't close her laptop, didn't gather her things. She just looked at each person in the room as if they were case studies in a failed system. And she had just graded the exam. Full marks. "I've been in healthcare, in tech, in law. I've seen racism wear suits better tailored than yours. So please don't insult me with surprise." The silence stretched long enough for the sound of a pen dropping on the far side of the table to be heard. This wasn't a miscommunication. It was a demonstration of what happens when no one is watching, or worse, when they think no one important is. The general manager lowered his gaze. The HR rep picked up her tablet, then set it down, not daring to touch the screen. Sloane stepped away from the table, as if shedding the final layer of armor she'd been forced to wear through her entire stay. At the doorway, she turned. No smile, no threat. Just one question, and no one in the room could answer it honestly. "If I hadn't come back, how long would it have taken your system to realize it was broken?" No one spoke, and that was the answer. The final silence in that conference room wasn't awkwardness. It was the kind of silence that only happens when power is cornered and forced to face itself. 3 days after the meeting, the resort operated as if nothing had happened. Breakfast still came with warm croissants and hand-pressed orange juice. Lofi music still played through ceiling speakers. Guests still strolled in white linen, snapping photos by the infinity pool with captions like "Paradise Found." No reporters showed up. No public statements were made. No letter from management circulated. But if you paid attention, you'd notice something was off. The head of HR stopped showing up at morning meetings. The hostess supervisor at the seaside restaurant was suddenly on indefinite personal leave. The director of operations, the Sky Lounge manager, and the evening floor supervisor were all relocated to international branches, corporate language for moved out of view to avoid bad press. Internally, they called it strategic restructuring, but anyone who's worked in this world knew. This was how you clean up when someone wounds the brand. The Esperanza Capital internal dashboard quietly added a new tab: Equity and Inclusion, Oversight, Escalated flag actions confidential. No one mentioned Sloane's name. No formal credit was documented. But the ripple had started. And silently, without noise, it began to change the way people looked at others who looked like her. A few chairs were left empty. No explanation offered. Just absence at the right time. A week later, staff received an internal memo. Starting next month, all frontline employees will participate in mandatory monthly unconscious bias training. There was no launch event, no smiling group photo, no words like racism or guest incident. The materials were sent under the name of the new director of training, an Indian woman recently promoted from spa operations. The subject line read, "Empathy and Service Culture Redefining Guest Identity." The language was soft. The images showed smiling multiracial faces. But the content was sharp, scalpel sharp. Behavioral patterns of appearance-based prioritization. Identifying implicit bias through tone, clothing, posture. Rule no assumptions, only verification through behavior and data. Each week came with a short quiz. Fail twice, and your quarterly bonus was cut. No one pushed back because everyone understood. This wasn't an invitation. It was a warning. Whispers spread among the staff. Is she still around, that woman? Sloane something? No idea. But since that Sky Lounge thing, management doesn't take chances anymore. There was no lawsuit, no teary interviews on the news, just a quiet shift steady, like a tide pulling back before anyone noticed. No slogans went up on the walls, just a subtle change in how people chose their words with guests, and how they started listening to themselves. That week, a few staff received small sealed envelopes in their mail slots. Anna, the Ecuadorian housekeeper. Malik, the Haitian bellhop. Julia, the Dominican dinner server. Ramon, the bartender who didn't participate in the Sky Lounge profiling. And Leah, the intern who had tried to stop the hostess from moving Sloane away from the oceanside table. No one spoke about them. No one opened them in public. Only quiet smiles, slow nods, and grateful glances. Inside each envelope, a 1,000 appreciation bonus voucher. A printed thank you note bearing the Esperanza Capital logo, with no mention of why. And one handwritten line, "You didn't know I was watching. That's why your kindness mattered." No signature, but they all understood. They told no one, just folded the notes, tucked them into wallets, and returned to their shifts like any other day. But in their eyes, something had changed. That night, Julia poured wine for a black woman guest without questioning her reservation. Malik carried luggage for an African couple without pretending to forget to smile. Leah adjusted the flowers on the buffet table, gently as if correcting something that had been wrong for a long time. She didn't need applause, because what she left behind wasn't in a name. It lived in how people started treating one another, when no one was watching. That noon, the sun scorched like fire. Even the sea breeze carried the sting of salt and the rising heat from the stone courtyard of the main lobby. Sloane pulled her suitcase with one hand, sunglasses in the other. Her hair was neatly tied up, the white linen dress flowing like a second skin, as if it were shedding all the layers of power she had worn over the past few days. She needed no escort, no checkout bell, no staff to carry her bags. Just one step out of the system the same way she had stepped into it silently, self-possessed, and leaving no sound behind, except impact. At the front desk, a new employee, a young Filipino man, handled her checkout. He didn't know who she was, only that she had deep eyes, beautiful handwriting, and didn't quite resemble any guest he'd seen stay there. Everything was satisfactory. "I hope," he asked, his tone genuinely warm. "Yes," she replied, "better than expected." She smiled, not the smile meant for hotels, but the kind reserved for those beginning to understand. She handed over the room card, the safe key, and walked out. But inside the safe, she left a folded note, no trace. Handwritten, in dark blue ink. "Some guests check out, others check your system." No name, no contact information, only a presence that had departed but had not been erased. It wasn't a goodbye. It was ink indelible in the ledger of operations. A black SUV waited. The driver opened the door, bowed, said nothing. She stepped in, never looking back. At the exact moment, the car window slid up. Something happened behind her like a final signal from the last system she had touched. The LED board above the concierge desk, which had always displayed messages like happy hour at Azul Cielo or yoga at Sunset Pavilion, suddenly lit up with a new line. No event, no promotion. Just one sentence bold, white font on a black background. Respect is not a courtesy. It's a requirement. The afternoon shift staff froze for a moment. A black guest in a linen suit walked by, glanced at the board, and gave a silent nod like he had just recognized someone in a distant crowd. The front desk coordinator quickly checked the system dashboard, trying to figure out who had changed the message. There was no log. No one claimed responsibility. But it stayed there. Every word, undeniable. A slogan, with no speaker, but everyone who read it understood this did not come from PR. Sloane sat still in the car. No phone, no status update. She simply looked out the window, watching the shadows of palm trees pass by like untold stories. The sea breeze no longer smelled of vacation. It was now the echo of something planted in a system and taking root. Behind her, the resort continued to welcome guests as usual, but no one knew it had just been quietly dismantled and rebuilt, not with noise, but with silent intelligence. Leah, the front desk intern, accidentally found the note in the safe while preparing the room for the next guest. She unfolded it, read it slowly, then tucked it into her personal notebook. That evening, when her roommate asked, "Anything special happened today?" she simply replied, "We just sent off someone. Very different. Who's someone we should try to repeat? In ourselves." People like Sloane don't leave names in history. They leave corrections in systems, and questions no one dares to ask out loud. Who isn't being seen? Who isn't being trusted? And what have we done to change that? Sloane didn't need to return, because what she sowed had already begun to grow in internal meetings, in the glances exchanged between staff, and in the silent operating system of the human heart. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher, one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.